So while we're waiting for some people to get connected, thank you all for joining us today. Thanks for joining Seven Rivers Lean Consortium on our monthly training topic. I want to appreciate everybody's flexibility and joining us over their lunch hour on this fine Tuesday in Wisconsin, or wherever you may be from. Hard to tell sometimes. Just some quick news before we start today's presentation. We are getting toward the end of the year, so the Seven Rivers board would like to start getting ideas for what our membership would like to see toward training for this next year. So in the upcoming month, we'll be sending out a survey, and that'll give you a chance to tell us what you'd be interested in some of our 2021 programming. So again, that will be our monthly membership meetings. We still at this point plan on having our symposium on May 11th of 2021 with Jamie Flinchbaugh, and we are still hoping to do about 3 gembas or tours of other facilities, either virtually or in person next year. But in all that other time, we'd love to understand what kinds of topics toward continuous improvement you'd be interested in. So think about it, and that survey will be out within the month. Another topic is we're always looking for volunteers. We've had a lot of changes this year, and we'd like to get our committees and groups back up and operating and functional. So we're looking for volunteers to help with these presentations, as well as just the general guidance of the Seven Rivers Lean Consortium in general. So you'll also see that from me before the end of the year, just some of the available board positions we have, as well as committee positions, and maybe give you an idea of things you'd like to volunteer with and help out to get more involved. Our final training for this year will be on November 17th. It'll be a continuation of this training. So today we're going to be looking through process mapping, value stream mapping, and how that led from gemba to an opportunity into how we start to define that opportunity into different actions. Our next training will be on how do we prioritize actions and what types of tools can we use to understand the most benefit for the effort. All right, and before we start, and I hand off to Joel, just a little Zoom meeting etiquette. So please use the chat feature. If you're not sure where that's at, right at the bottom of your screen, if you hover over, go ahead and use that chat feature right at the bottom of your screen. That would be the best way for us to communicate. We will have opportunity for you to unmute and ask questions if you'd like to, but we'll make sure that just part of the presentation so we can keep some of those distractions down. Until we get to some of those points, let's please keep our microphones and cameras off just so we can focus on the presenters today. As usual, we are going to be recording this session. We do have a YouTube channel, so if you've missed it or you like the content, you want to share it with others, that link will go out and you can always go review. We can also make the presentation itself available or anything else. Just don't be shy, go ahead and email us at Seven Rivers Lean or use the chat feature. We can make sure we're helping you as best we can. All right. So now I'm going to hand it off to Joel Turino. Joel Turino today is going to be presenting on value stream mapping processes and flow charting and mapping. Again, during our gemba of DuraTech this last month, we found an opportunity, and we're going to walk through now a process of how, when you have identified that your metrics might not be where you want it to be, how do you actually take action on that, and what are types of tools that you can use, and how do you facilitate them in a virtual or blended environment like we have today? Okay, so Joel, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to you.
Very good. Thank you, Tim. Yeah, one of the most important things to remember about any kind of mapping process or charting that we do is that they really are more of a strategic tool. And if we don't have a plan to follow our process, identify opportunities, and actually implement them to change the work that people do, we really haven't improved the business at all. And so there are a series of really important steps that we need to go through from the, the first identification that there is a problem or a process issue until we actually fix that. And so there's some structure around that we can talk about. So I'm going to talk a little bit today about value stream mapping and the process flow charting that are really powerful tools that help us change from identification to improvement in that journey. Okay. So value stream mapping really started off long time ago, but and you will see a lot of acronyms in the lean world, VSMs and SIPOCs and QFDs and all these things. So VSM is really standard in the value stream mapping world. And really a value stream map is a high level graphical representation. Now, think about that, a very high level graphical representation of a process flow from the beginning to the end. And what's unique about a value stream map is that it is a strategic tool, but it also is a live tool, meaning that as you make improvements, you need to then change your map because your map now is no longer current. It is now a portion of current and portion of reality. And so you need to constantly keep it updated. And also what's very unique about a value stream map is that it shows the differences between the information flow and the material flow. And this process that we're going through with DuraTech is verging on both of them, where when you saw Tim and his team go through the gemba walk in their factory, they were observing the material flow and they're observing opportunities within that process. And now as we start to see what drives those problems, it leads us into the information flow. And so you're constantly going back and forth, and the map and any charting software or charting techniques, we use a series of icons or pictures to help create a common language, which is really important when we're trying to convey the reality of a process to people who are unfamiliar with a map or any kind of training around it. But once they understand the language, it comes very clear very quickly. And that's what's another powerful tool of using that in the mapping process. So when we use the value stream mapping tool, you typically start off with a product family. Because what happens is if you look at everything that a factory makes, you can't do it all. You have to look at where are my bigger opportunities, because there's only so many resources to go around. And so when we do a product family, there's a process that we use to identify which ones have a bigger impact on our business than others, either from a profitability, maybe a margin, maybe from a quality standpoint, maybe just from an efficiency perspective. So we use a series of tools to identify what are the most important ones to work on first. And so then once you choose a product family, then as Tim and his team did last month, they went out and they documented the current state. And they said, okay, here's where we're at. Here's are the problems that we're seeing. And so how can we go ahead and improve these process? And it really is the foundation for the future state. And then as you go along and you analyze your process and you look at opportunities, you will then start to create your future state on how you want the process to flow. How do you want to eliminate the waste? How do you want to get rid of the things that slow you down? That's where you're starting to develop and conversation with your teams on how do I make my business go faster, right? And then identification of those is where you put a plan in place and you implement. Remember, value stream mapping is a strategic tool. It truly is not a tactical tool until you develop the plan and you start working on implementation. Then it starts to transition to a tactical tool. Okay. So another part that we look at is when we follow the process to the problems. Okay. So again, value stream mapping is a high level graphical representation. As we start looking at the individual process steps, we identify attributes that are not favorable for the business. We then go in and we dig deeper into that to look at the sub-processes. And then as we start digging into the sub-processes, we find things that are problems even more intricate within that process, and we get into the micro processes until finally we find the root cause of the problems that are slowing our people down and giving us inefficiencies in our process. It really is a constant churning of going through the processes and breaking it down until we finally fix the work that people are stuck in, right? Remember, Dr. Ed Deming used to say, we hire willing workers and we trap them in processes filled with waste. If you think about that, we hire them, we train them, and we put them in a process that's stuck with waste, and it just slows them down and it creates frustration in the whole organization. So ultimately, what we want to do is we want to fix the problems to improve the work. Okay, so this breaks it down even more. And so what I'm trying to get you folks to understand is that from a high level, we just keep peeling back the processes, evaluating what are the most important ones, how do we better fix what we need to do until we are actually making the work more effective. Okay, and so why do we want to do it? Well, we want a process map because it helps us to identify and to create a common language, right? And we have different maps that we use. And I'm just going to highlight on a few of these that we have in here. So we have relationship maps, okay? Relationship maps, and, and we use process and flow symbols, right? Again, the symbols or the icons or the pictures are just a way to communicate. So as people learn the icons and the symbols, they're able to follow along the process and understand, why does this one go backwards? Or why does it stop? Or why do we have to make a decision here, right? It shows us where the delays are. It shows us where the things are that the customer really doesn't value. And so we have the opportunity to constantly review these steps to make sure that they are adding value. So a relationship mapping, okay? So a relationship mapping is kind of, again, a lower level, but yet still a higher level. It helps us to understand, where does my stuff come from? What do I do with that stuff? And then where does it go, right? And in the Six Sigma world, you'll hear us talk about a SIPOC. Okay? These are very common in many ways, where we have the supplier and our work processes and our customers, okay? Another type of map is a cross-functional map, right? Now, a cross-functional map, you'll also hear them called swim lane charts or swim lane maps, okay? Where it clearly defines the different levels or departments of an organization, and how does a process go through those different departments? Where are the bottlenecks? Where are the backtracks? Where's the rework loops that are in them? How much time does a certain process or department take? We often hear that, well, we have a process and it's stuck in accounting right now. Well, why is it stuck in accounting? Well, it can't leave there until they do their work. And so it helps us to visualize, where do these different process flows go to, and helps us understand the opportunities to make improvements, right? Along with the swim lane map, a cross-functional map, right? Again, another visual tool to help us understand, where do they go? Where's the bottlenecks? Where's the rework loops? Where are things that slow us down along the way? Process flow charts, right? They really, again, help us to understand from a single step to a cross-functional. And they help to explain it. They give us more detail. We can add in different tools and techniques, and we can make sure that we understand the reality of what is happening in our processes. So flowchart mapping, starting at the same point, it shows you your steps, your actions, your tasks. Some people will modify their own icons to make them unique to themselves, right? There are some standard ones that are used out there. But if you really want to get the maps so that people understand them and personalize them, people will use their own logos. They will use customer names. They will use department icons, just to make them a little personalized so that people understand where they go and what they mean. Okay? And so, kind of in summary, our process mapping is meant to be kept simple and understood by all. it really helps to create a common language so that your training, for one thing, is more efficient. And it also helps to grow the organization from learning where the waste is. Process map symbols, they can be customized, like I said, and they're required before any strategic-based continuous improvement initiatives. So it helps us to focus on what are the things that slow us down and how can we make those improvements. And they are the foundations for any Kaizen work that you want to do, right? And as you go through and you see what Tim and his team are doing today, by focusing on their information flow and the process steps that they have identified, there are some big opportunities that they have seen that can really help to reduce their throughput cycle time to make their process more efficient. Okay. List the steps to help guide you through the process. Go to the website, go to the YouTube channel, use this stuff, and you know, get the charting out there so that people can help, everybody on your team can help see where their problems are and how they can fix them, right? So anytime you guys want to reach out to any one of the Seven Rivers board members or group, we're all more than happy to help our members understand how to use these tools and the benefits that they have. All right. So that's my flow charting presentation for today. I will turn the screen back over to Tim so that he can walk us through the work that they've done over there.
All right. Well, let me switch over to my monitor. So today, one thing we also want to show is how can you work with a remote team or blended team like we have here today to facilitate continuous improvement. So Joel is our remote facilitator. Our team here from DuraTech, we saw them on Gemba last month in different areas, some remote like Jen was, others here in person like Amy was. But now today we'll be sitting here but showing you our processes virtually. To do that, we have created a process map of where we left off after the last meeting. That process map had to do with our order processing procedure. Okay, so now you should all see our process we'll be looking at today with Joel. So overall, let me give you an orientation of what you're seeing. If you're not familiar with Visio, that is the tool we'll be using today to do some process mapping. There's many other tools out there. Commonly internally, we also use Excel. There's some online options. Maybe a nice thing that the membership could do today is if you use different software to do process mapping, perhaps in the chat section, you can do a public chat of just types of tools you use, why you like them, or advantages and disadvantages. So why don't you do that on the side and maybe give some other members some insights. But today we'll focus on our map in Visio, and with Joel's guidance, we'll start working through it. So in Visio, you see that we can load different shapes over here. What's nice with this tool is we can load different types of shapes for different types of projects we're working on. So today for me, you'll see that we have our basic workflow shapes. And we'll also be working and adding or supplementing with some of the basic value stream map shapes. What we see on my screen is the process flow for the entire procedure. Unfortunately, this is a pretty high level. So if I were to walk through everything in the white boxes from start to stop, it's the high level of how the entire departmental process works for Jen in our customer service department. On Gemba, we found that there was one specific metric we weren't quite satisfied with. That had to do with this first step highlighted in green. And what that has to do with is now a sub-process of our customer service reps of a specific position, like our product engineering position called process planner, who has to, from time to time, look at material, If we don't have the specific material to build parts, they would have to create a material requisition and send the proper information to order setup or hold at this process depending. So what we're going to work through with the team is now go through the green process, which is that position of process planner. We then see in this first blue step, it goes to yet another sub-process, which will be our purchasing department, to help them at that work. So as Joel showed in his slideshow, sometimes you have to start very high level, break it down to a sub-process, yet another sub-process, to really understand all the steps that are driving your metrics or the opportunities you may have.
And that's a good point there, Tim, because also what could happen is once you have your high level map made, you will find that a certain sub-process needs immediate work. And so it defaults to helping you to prioritize which sub-process you want to work on first and why. And sometimes we need to get funding. Sometimes we need to get extra resources. And so by having that prioritization, which we'll go through next month, you're going to be able to put them in a sequence of work and a sequence of activities that will give you, faster throughput and improve your metrics.
Okay, so that is just an overview of what we will be looking at. So Joel, as facilitator, do you want us to start walking through the process now?
Yeah, so really you would start to say, okay, the first thing to look at is wherever there is a yes or no, okay? And so when there's a decision icon or a decision place, we need to really have our team discussion to say, why don't we have the material? Why do we have to look for the material? What is it that we're looking for? And because remember, the customer doesn't care if we have material. They expect us to have material. They don't really care if we're chasing after our material. They don't care if we're, if we're having to expedite it. All they care about is the quality of the product, the cost of the product, and the delivery of the product, right? So that's a point where your team can say, okay, we have to stop here. We have to slow down. We have to go and check material, right? So, the question I would ask is, why do you have to look for material? Why are we even asking, do we have material in this process flow from your team?
Sure. Jen, do you want to explain why we do it or limitations we may have?
Sure. The main reason that we currently check material is because in order for us to schedule the job, we have to know that we have the material readily available on the shelf. So if we're going to schedule the job to start on Friday, we want to make sure that the material is there so that when the screener goes to grab the material, they can start the job. So again, as part of our current process, we have to know it's there so that, again, it's readily available when the scheduler wants to know it's there. So that's how she determines when we can actually start the job. That makes sense.
So what you're saying is that we're starting the job based on material availability, not just based on that our schedule says we should go ahead and run the job.
Correct.
Correct. Right. And that is so true in so many businesses, that our material availability drives our schedule, not necessarily our customers driving our schedule. Right. And so there's opportunities around that to help us understand how do we improve that? Because again, the customer doesn't care that we're checking material. The customer only expects it to come to them the way that they need it. So it's an internal process that we're using to chase after and manage our inventory, right? Okay. So then your next question is your material on order, yes or no? So it seems like we're checking material and then we don't have a clear understanding on, is it on order? We don't have visibility to that. So can we explain a little bit about that one?
Sure. So when the process planner is checking material, We have a search available right now that will, one, tell them, do we have enough currently on the shelf, yes or no? If we don't have enough currently on the shelf, then right in that same search, it will also let us know if we already have material on order that's in transit and on its way to us. And if it is on order, it'll usually, then we'll check to see if it has a date. Because if it is on order, then we can make those comments in there and give it to the scheduler so she can schedule the job in anticipation of when the material is going to be here. So if it's going to be here in a couple weeks, she would schedule for the job to start in a couple weeks.
Sure. Okay. So in this highlighted process flow from the planner that generates the material requisition until we need to order, do we have a total cycle time of how long that takes about?
We do. I can switch over to that screen.
Okay.
Let me get to our data there.
So what we're doing, and you guys have created a current state process, right? So part of the value stream mapping is to say, okay, here's currently where we're at. And so we need some data around that. We want to have a cycle time. How long does it take for this process to happen? Because when we look at our future state plan, we want to have a target that we want to go after to improve that cycle time. Go ahead, Tim.
Correct. So our team, based on finding that current state, we wanted to understand what was driving some of the delays in the metrics. So we worked with our IS department to pull refreshable data directly from our ERP system, in that we can see all the different types of orders and whether or not material delays based on, we have a workflow. So this is based on who completed certain tasks within the workflow. Every time they complete a task or move it to the next, it creates a timestamp. So that was nice. A nice thing that DuraTech system allowed us to pull that data. We didn't have to do a pen and paper data study, which we have had to do in the past, but luckily for this process we're looking at, we had some digital ERP system data we could rely on. So Jen, I'm going to go ahead and let you explain the data and what it's showing us.
So because we have different types of printing processes here at DuraTech, we do have what Tim mentioned is different workflows. So when you look at the data over in column A, for instance, or even in the chart itself, you'll see where it says Flexo, Gerber, and then just work order. Those just represent some of the different types of printing processes that we have at DuraTech. And so each of them have their own type of workflow that we use. But what we did was collect data on from the time that a process planner checked material and realized that we needed it, to the time that they received confirmation back from our purchasing department as to the material is now on order and here's when it's going to be here. So you can give this order to the scheduler now so she can schedule accordingly. And for those jobs that needed to wait for that material confirmation, for instance, in the Flexo department, and this is in minutes, but it'll tell you that on the first one, the average is 566 minutes of wait time, non-value add is wait time before we can actually send an order through and have it scheduled for the customer. And the chart moves from there. So each of the different types of workflows that we have, and again, different processes, will show you what the average wait times are. So for instance, screen printing, which is one of our core processes that we have here, that would be in the work order area. And we have orders that have waited for up to 387 minutes, which I don't know my calculator to equate for hours on average. Again, averages of wait time before an order can actually go to the scheduler and then be scheduled in production.
Right. So your Flexo replenishment is 9.5 hours from the time that the buyer sees the demand until you're able to hand it off.
Correct.
Right. 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 So, so yeah, that's just weighting, right? And that's, you know, if you look at the 7 forms of waste, that is oftentimes in our factories, our material sits in weights. Our people are usually doing busy work, doing other stuff. So here's information is waiting for, you know, a verification or, you know, to move that process on, right? So, but that's a good point. So, you know, as we look at the future state map, okay, what are the opportunities to reduce this 9.5 hours? Do you guys have you identified opportunities within that?
So what could be a potential future state map?
Yes.
Or which one of these specific tasks could we have a time reduction opportunity for?
Well, if you think about the future, I mean, isn't your future state actually, you know, the planner generates the requisition and then a work order is created.
Right, eliminating the step completely.
Yeah, eliminating all the sub-processing. That's correct.
Right, so that's ultimately, you know, your make one, move one, your continuous flow operation is that, you know, I generate the requisition and I then generate the work order. So all this other stuff is extra,
Yes.
right? So in the mapping world, how do we go from current state to future, and what are the implementation activities that we need to do? So I'm sure you guys, as you mapped it, you probably talked about, you know, what are the opportunities? What are things that we can do?
Yeah, sure. So let's talk through, we can go step by step.
Sure.
So as a team, when we're checking RMI and Ceradex, did we have an opportunity just for that check?
We did. If we came to a place where we couldn't eliminate this step completely, I had some discussions with our IS department on, right now they have to go to a separate, they have to open up a separate ERP and go to a separate search to check material. They have to get out of the order that they're processing to verify if we have material, and if we don't, do we have it on order? Or if we don't have it on order, let's get it on order. Our IS department and I work together on presenting that data right in the order that they're processing, so that it's readily visible, and also color coding it. So green means go, red means no, and they can just move on versus having again to go out to a separate search and then analyze the data themselves. It would actually feed right into where they're at and do it for them to speed it up while they're checking the actual material checking process itself.
Automation.
So for the folks that are watching, Tim is in the process of developing a Kaizen burst. And the Kaizen burst is one of those icons that as you identify opportunities, this is a project. This is you know, something that we're going to need to maybe get resources, to get time, and it's something that we want to investigate to see, is this a project that has some validity in the business, and what would it cost to do this, and what would be the impact to our process flow if we had that done, right?
And Joel, this is one, you know, we do create a lot of maps here, but just a question as we go through this. There's different icons that we use. For instance, this is a Kaizen burst, but sometimes I'm on the fence as a user, and creating maps is, would I, in this case, Jen explained, all right, we have an opportunity to eliminate this through creating a database that is more of a self-serve or automation. So is it appropriate to use a database icon, or what would your suggestion be as we map?
Well, the database, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're kind of talking like this is a process improvement that we want to make.
Correct, it is.
Right. So the Kaizen burst is really the identification of an opportunity.
Okay.
We don't know the end result yet. We just know that this is, we want to eliminate this. This is a time trap. This is one that is slowing us down. So, and even in your statement of saying, add green, red, green indicator. That is also already saying that this would be a solution to that opportunity. The Kaizen burst really would be to eliminate the need to go to a second database for checking. We want to eliminate the checking. That really is your problem statement, right? When you look at what's happening within checking Ceradex, we take time to go in and check it. People do it at different ways. They probably do it with different levels of accuracy. So, when you get to a process box within the process flow that you identify problems, you want to just list them as like a problem statement. Okay. And again, Tim, as you develop your team and as you develop the use of the icons, you may want to kind of evolve to your own way of troubleshooting these so that you eliminate the time that you have in the analysis of these processes as well. So you could go to, more of a just do it type methodology as well, right? So right there is your statement, right? We need to eliminate the second database for checking, and how do we do that? Well, one is we can make it more visual. 2, we can go and add red or green icons. 3, we can add a database. Which one's easiest? Which one is most effective? Which one needs resources, right? And so you're starting to break that down into more of your analysis phase of your opportunities that you have identified. Great question though, when it comes to how do you best use the icons to denote the changes or the activities that you want. Definitely. I like the idea of the red and green. I think that's a great way because, when I was a purchasing manager, we had buyers and planners that had the same issues. And to have a visual indicator as soon as you go looking for something would really be an awesome way to help eliminate that go search function that is so inherent in that position, right? So.
And so next process step, do we have additional opportunities or thoughts about any of these next questions or steps? Do we have material? Seems like this helps satisfy that.
And is it on order? All of that, all the decision making between do we have material, is it on order, or no, we have nothing, would all feed right into that.
Into
Yep,
this
into
Kaizen
that step.
opportunity. Okay.
Yep.
So technically, this burst has potential to eliminate this whole cycle here.
I wouldn't say eliminate, just make it easier.
Okay.
Because all of that's done in the second database right now,
Mhm.
and it's very manual. They have to type in each of the, if you could have up to 3 or 4 different materials that you need for a job, and you have to individually type in the item numbers in, and you have to kind of, I don't want to say do the math, but do the math to figure out if we have enough.
Right.
So this new system, again, would feed the information and eliminate the need for all that manual checking that they have to do.
So we would basically go from check to here.
Yes.
Right.
Okay. So I guess, Joel, we would maybe take a copy and start mapping the future state.
You could, yes. And another thing to think about as you guys are talking about this, so on that one product family where you had 9.5 hours of wait time on the Flex,
Yep.
Yes. Yep.
the Flex one. So by implementing this, what do you feel would be your reduction of cycle time? I mean, would your cycle time, to go from, your 566 minutes.
Here's the thing.
Mhm.
All of that's doing. So Joel, the one thing I will say is that my part of it is just eliminating some of it's time consuming to go in and actually do the checking in the first place,
Sure.
which I didn't have the cycle time for, mind you.
Okay.
I still, even though I will have this search, I still will have it now tell me I need material and it has to go to purchasing.
Okay.
So this particular database that I'm looking at creating is not going to decrease that 9-hour cycle time. I'm
Okay.
still gonna have to send it to purchasing and say, I need this flexo material. Let me know when it's coming in.
Okay.
So there'd be additional steps or things that maybe we can talk about
Sure.
in the blue area that would more affect that 9-hour cycle time
Right.
that we're talking about.
Would it affect, say, the quality of that process? Could you eliminate some potential mistyping or defects?
Yes, you bring up a good point. Absolutely. If someone interprets the data incorrectly, thinks
Right.
we have enough on the shelf, and when we don't, yes, this feeding it to them would eliminate some of the errors that we could see in maybe ordering it when we didn't need it or not ordering it when we need it.
Right, right. Some of the important things to remember about when you're analyzing a process like this is that there are different measurable attributes of every process. So you have a cycle time from the start to the end. Okay, you have your process yield. Okay, so what's our quality level going through that process? Do we have, every one of our people, when they manage that process, they have 0 defects, or every once in a while we mistype, we do things? Okay, what about from a training perspective and a new employee perspective? If we have a process that's cumbersome and a lot of additional manual back and forth, what's our training opportunity or our ability to help, bring in resources? So when we look at a process like that, we want to look at what are the things that we're also affecting, not only of our cycle time, but our yield, our resources, reliability. We look at machinery out in the plant floor and we talk about reliability, what we call your TPM measurement or your uptime. Information processes have that same measurement of reliability that we can measure. Whether it's our people or our processes that are driving that reliability. So think about those as you go through it, because there's more to than just cycle time when it comes to the robustness of a process. Okay. Okay, so your future state map would looks like you got it partially drawn there, Tim, from
this step, we drop directly down, we get rid of this whole cycle of questions.
right.
It would be the goal for that using the IS solution.
Great. So the probability of that solution, is it reasonable? Is it, does it take a lot of resources? What do you think would be the implementation opportunity for that repair, that fix?
Right now, Joel, our IS team actually had shown me an example and has it in place.
Really?
We have some new forms, which is basically, I guess I'll say it's like an update to how our forms look in our current ERP system. And we're on the edge of wanting to release those, and that's where that new search would come from. But we have found a couple glitches with our ERP that we want them to work out before we'll launch it.
Mm-hmm.
So the probability is good.
Yeah.
We're just waiting on a couple fixes that need to happen from the owners of or the creators of our ERP system.
You probably do some testing, I would imagine, and
Yeah.
So would this be something that would go across all of the product families?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. So the impact would be quite big when you look at all the different handling steps that all your buyers do.
Yes. Correct.
Right. So it would be interesting to look at, on average, how many different times do your people run through this process, and what would be the, granted, it might be different than the time spent, You know, sometimes it's more the frequency than the time that are contributors to how our time is spent from an efficiency standpoint. If something we go to all the time, it only takes a few minutes, we don't always think about it. But if we all of a sudden start to list that, well, we did this process, 3,000 times this past year, it adds a different level of impact to the business. Right. So yeah, I mean, those are good measurements that you would have there from a process box standpoint, Tim. Your frequency, your time spent, your waiting time, defects, or your quality yield, right? How many, what are the opportunities, and even your so your uptime could be new employee training. How long does it take to get somebody trained now versus with our new process? I mean, the new process sounds like it's going to be really easy. I mean, it's all there. So those are things when you're doing the mapping and you're talking about impacts to the business. Every company has different measurements that are important to them, and it's good as a team that you guys decide that these are the ones that we want to measure. These are the ones that show how the improvement is impacting the business. And I think that's important for our members to realize too, is that, what you guys do versus what other companies do are completely different. The fundamental principles of using the charting and the mapping, the data boxes, your icons, I mean, fundamentally, they're all really the same. And that's kind of the message that we want to get to folks, right? So yeah, it sounds like you guys did a great job walking through this and getting, identifying an opportunity. Right? Now, was this something that's been talked about in the past, or is this something that just came out of this workshop over the past couple months?
Yes.
Yes.
So it's of course been identified, but not the resources put around it. So we have been preparing for a Kaizen event. So in that, DuraTech we like to get together, walk through process, make sure the team fully understands it. And then we list many different opportunities from each process step to potentially turn into the focus of the Kaizen. So this, we walked past, we identified some opportunities, but we're not sure quite where it fits in the priority of all the potential opportunities we have. It seems like we have some IS resources, but we're not quite sure if something else will take priority yet.
Sure.
Yeah.
So in this process map of this whole page, what would be the next portion of this map do you feel that you would go after?
Well, I think Amy, would that be here?
I think it's more of the purchasing team, which you see those processes are in blue.
Yeah.
Because once Jennifer's team identifies the need, their work orders are assigned to my team. And so there's a lot of things that factor into it. We see what do we have on order. We even get those orders that do have materials on order because we don't always have the due date readily available when the team before us is looking to see if they have it or if it's on order. So we have to confirm those dates still when that's not available for them. We review all orders pending for all the materials. We combined all those required quantities into a purchase order to the supplier. And then it's a waiting game, right? We do urge our suppliers to reply within 24 hours of the time that we provided the PO.
And they always do. And they always do, right?
Yeah.
All right.
Hear my sarcasm? So sometimes the wait time is supplier side. So we don't have a lot of control over that other than, continue to communicate and follow up and see where they're at. So some of the downtime is waiting for the confirmed date. We then have to go back into each of those workflows that have been assigned to us to add when the material is expected to arrive.
Right.
So we have to go into a couple different places ourselves to get that information and then go in and provide the information back for Jennifer's team as well.
Right. Yeah, so you can see as you kind of walk through these process steps that each one of those boxes have a series of microprocesses within there with another series of decision boxes and questions and workflows and back and forths. And so there's just so much opportunity in the information flow to really make improvements. And unfortunately, a lot of this work that our people do in these processes, I mean, we can't quantify how much time it takes or how much resources you need. Only kind of our experience, people will tell you, well, it depends on the customer, depends on the product, on how long it takes for me to do this, right? And, have you guys used any kind of visual tracking indicators in your department, like Q-dip boards or anything like that to measure cycle times? Would be a way to keep it visual as well.
Not currently.
Okay.
I'm trying to think of any signals we have out there, or not for this part of the process.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there's opportunity there as well to make it more visual as far as how long certain suppliers are taking to respond. I know we did that when I was with my last company. We had performance measures by different suppliers, so we're able to track their performance and know how well they're doing. So
we do have that but from a higher level in the supplier scorecard, when we look at
supplier
we look
scorecard.
at it by supplier, not specifically what we're ordering from them.
Right.
So that we do, and we discuss that weekly. And there are some visual charts on that specific, but not related to Jen's pain points. So as the internal customer.
Okay. So I would just suggest, your next process improvement is to, like I said, walk down through and map through some of these processes that are the bigger problems, whether it's cycle time or defects, and start making your list of improvements and strategically working through them. That's how we can do that.
Yes, perfect. So we will continue to work through our process and discuss, and it sounds like that will queue us up then for when a company has many different opportunities. What types of tools can we use to best prioritize those opportunities with the resources available?
Right.
I think that's a nice tee up for our discussion next month.
Right. Sounds good. Sounds good.
All right. So anything else, Joel, you want to talk through on the map I'm showing? I'm going to go ahead and stop my share so I can see if we got any questions coming in through the channel.
No, I'm good with what you guys got going on, and I look forward to working with you guys for the next month. Perfect.
Okay. So from membership, I think that's really what we wanted to show today, is now we identified something in Gemba. So what types of process mapping tools can be used, and how can you facilitate those conversations through a process map to identify different types of opportunity? So as we modeled today, we identified opportunities for data collection so that we could better understand the true impact of specific parts of the process. We talked about different types of data collection through the ERP system, or sometimes having to manually collect that data. We also talked about Kaizen bursts. So when you found something, Joel did a great job on stating, okay, you found opportunities. Now is not the time to put solutions toward that. Now is the time just to identify what's broken, put it into a good problem statement, and address that in another day when you're done with your entire process, so that you can best prioritize the most benefit for the effort you put in toward that. Joel, any other key points? Did I summarize?
I think you did a good job. Good summary, yes.
All right, so tour membership. I know we're getting right down on time. I want to be respectful of that. Do you have any questions, or would you like any more advice on any of the content that we shared today? Please feel free to use the chat, or now is a perfect opportunity to come off mute and go ahead and ask your question directly. Hopefully you're all still there. Any questions? I see that nobody else put software titles into the chat of things that you use for process mapping, what works well for you. So, always a good thing if you wanted to share that way, but we want to make sure these meetings have information, but we can also take time to make them collaborative. So the more participation, the better. I'll give a minute on the awkward silence. That works good in meetings.
Yeah. It's all scared.
Right. Okay, well, membership, if you have nothing else for today and no questions or clarifications, then we will see you soon. A couple just announcements from the beginning. You'll see a survey come out of types of topics you'd like to see for next year. So what are you looking forward to this type of programming for 2021, or what can help you on your lean journey? So that survey will be coming out this month. Also, we're always looking for people that want to get involved. So if you want to volunteer some of your time to help out the Seven Rivers Lean Consortium, we have some available positions. You meet with a great group of people once a month, and we can help set the direction for what we think will be helpful for our lean professionals in our area. So those are the two major things. We'll see you on the 17th, I hope, again, virtually, to continue this discussion on how do we move from gemba to process to prioritization of opportunities. And we're still discussing what our December meeting may or may not look like. It's often our social, a time that we can just talk and mingle, but we're looking at options, whether virtually or on site, and we'll provide more information later. So again, thank you all for joining us today, and we will see you soon.
Everybody.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.